right. So I had a whole opening to this planned out, and then Warren talked, and I changed my mind about what I wanted to start with, because I am a creative director on the Versu project at Linden Lab, and this is a platform that we are creating for interactive stories, and it is both Warren's dream and Warren's nightmare. And what I mean by that is, I had a really hard time not raising my hand or shouting or saying something during the portion of his talk where he was saying, I would love to play a game where you could spill your water and it could get on somebody's lap and then they could react to you a certain way. I'm like, that exact moment is in our game already. That's there. There's a thing where that happens, then somebody can, you know, if they're your friend, they could just blow it off, or if they don't like you, they could get mad. It's in there. We do that. That's the kind of thing we do. That's the kind of story that we're creating, and part of what the social system is for.
I played it.
So, you know, but why claim that nobody's doing it then? And that's why it's Warren's nightmare. Thank you for playing along so beautifully. Because he also said nobody wants to read and nobody wants to do dialogue, and we're doing dialogue in text. That's the main portion of what the game experience is about. So, to back up a little bit about sort of what the structure of this is, the underlying content of the Versu platform is a simulator that was created by Richard Evans, who is the lead AI designer for Sims 3, worked on Black and White. And it is designed to go beyond some of the kinds of social interactions that you can get in The Sims, where people are worried about going to the bathroom, or worried about visiting each other's houses, or worried about using the pool, into things that are more about moment-to-moment social interactions and social practices. So the simulator is explicitly modeling things like, what's appropriate to do when you're having dinner with somebody? What's appropriate to do when you're having a conversation with somebody? What options are available to you, and what kinds of things can you do in that situation? And then the character who is being played by the player can select from among the available options that are appropriate to that context. And the other characters in the scenario are represented by AI who make decisions of their own depending on their own particular personality characteristics. And different characters can have different tendencies, different interests, different preferences. Some characters can be very talkative, some characters can be very quiet, some characters can be aggressive, some characters can care a lot about being polite or impolite or prudish, or any of those kinds of things can be built into the character model and create reactions that those specific characters will have that set them apart. And the aim of that is to create interactive agents who don't just feel like they were all stamped out and they were all identical, but they really have their own eccentricities and nuances. And part of the experience that we were reaching for is something that is an interactive comedy of manners, an interactive social experience that's about the ways that people are different, eccentric, nuanced, and complex. At the same time, it's a game where we want to invite the player to use what I like to call social physics, right? There are a lot of games that do physics about boxes, guns, forces in the real world, and so the player is able to anticipate what's going to happen in the story as a result of their actions, because they know if I push a barrel, the barrel's going to fall over, it's going to roll down that hill, when I pick it up with the gravity gun, this is going to happen, all of those kinds of things. What we want to do is provide the experience to players where they are bringing into this world the expectations that they have on the basis of what they know about how people react to things, that they're bringing the physics of their social experience and their social world. We've heard people earlier saying that games are about creating worlds, and I think that's true. But in Versu, the world that's being created is not so much a spatial representation as it is a social and cultural context in which the actions that you take have meaning based on people's expectations, their emotions, their beliefs, all of those sorts of things. We need to find a way to make those moments feel intense. So we need to make the conflict be not just between the characters and the situation that they're in, not just, oh, this episode says that you guys are all in a haunted house and that's scary, but also between the characters themselves, because the inner character conflict is where the real emotional heart of a story comes from. And that's true not only for stories that are about antagonism, it's also true for stories that are romances. Because a good romance is about these two characters sort of struggling to come to terms with each other, right? And your antagonist in a romance story is the person that you're in love with but can't quite live with. So some of the design challenge for us has been how do we take the simulation that we are dealing with and create that possibility of antagonism between characters that's going to be meaningful, is going to express the true content of those characters. And one of the things that's been a big influence on my thinking about this is playing an indie RPG called Polaris. Has anybody played that or played story games at all? So I go to the Seattle, not story games in the sense of indie games about stories. I mean specifically sort of indie story game, what's called story games in the indie RPG way. Yeah. So Fiasco or Shock or things like that. A lot of these are D&D-like, but they have no game master and they are played between people in a very free-form, creative sense, and this has been a great source of inspiration to me. In particular, in Polaris, there is a wonderful mechanic where if you play somebody's antagonist in the story, and so they do something, and you can respond to the thing that they've tried to do by saying, you can do that, but only if this other thing happens. And they can say, okay, but only if this other thing happens. And so there's this back and forth negotiation. You can kill your enemy, but only if in the process you also destroy the artifact that you brought with you. And the other person might say, okay, I destroy the artifact, but only if I get to keep shards from the artifact that are going to be valuable to me later. So the application of this to Versu is that we want characters who are going to be able to come head to head and negotiate with each other in a way that springs from their character model. And so the way that we've done this is that, an individual piece of dialogue can carry a great deal more information with it than the average piece of dialogue in the average dialogue tree. And so a piece of dialogue, I could say something like, I think we should hire this guy because he seems really bright to me. And that piece of dialogue is embedded with several different expectations and beliefs about the world. First of all, it says, I have observed something about this character in the past that has made me conclude that they have a high intelligence. And I have decided that intelligence is important. And I've decided that intelligence specifically is important to the relationship of employee and boss. And so I propose to you that we should hire him as a result. And the other character could respond in any of a number of ways depending on what that character's ethos and beliefs are. So if this is said to a character who does not believe that intelligence is the primary important thing in a person that they're hiring, could say, you know, I'm really not interested in that. I'm interested in, are they going to be a good team player? Or they could say, I don't think they're that smart, actually, because I earlier saw them doing this idiotic thing, and remember the idiotic thing that they saw earlier in the story that they then can bring forward as justification to reject the proposal that the character has made. And then, often, for the character who's rejecting or countering that initial belief, to put forward some beliefs of their own, or puts forward some conditions, saying, you know, oh, I would be willing to do this if we did something else. And so what comes out of this is we have pieces of story in which challenges are created that other characters can respond to dynamically depending on what the simulation tells them they want to do. And that can be influenced by, do they like you? Do they want to agree with you? What else have they seen? What is their character ethos? And all of those things. So, now we get to the sort of tools aspect of all of this. Something that is this dynamic is quite challenging to create, and in particular, it's something where it needs a great deal of content, and a great deal of content of different types to be at its most vibrant and its most exciting, because having lots of different characters to play with makes it considerably stronger. And this is where we get to the point where I have actual slides, although they're not slides of Versu, for a reason which I'm about to explain. So, when I was invited to do this talk, Noah said, I want you to talk about what you're trying to do, why you're trying to do it at a high level, but also do nuts and bolts. Talk about what you've done, what worked, what didn't work, and what new tools you're doing, and also have 10 minutes. And then I went and talked to our PR guy, and he said, and also don't tell anybody anything specific in terms of promises about what exactly the UGC tools are going to look like. So, this is an interesting situation to be in. So, what I'm going to do for the rest of my time is talk about what are the principles from other projects that I've worked with that address the problems that I see we need to address for Versu. What kinds of things do we have in mind? And to do that, I'm going to talk a little bit about a previous tool called Inform 7, which is for creating text adventures in kind of a classical parser mode. Now, the reason that I think this is relevant is that with Versu, we are looking to make UGC tools as really one of the primary uses of the platform. It's about enabling people to create things and share them with one another, and that's the core of what the company is trying to do. And so the UGC aspect of Versu has always been front and center. We've always been about, we are not just going to make this stuff and make our own content, we're going to make something where lots of people can contribute and lots of people can play, and then they can bounce their stories and their characters off one another. But if you are making a UGC tool, the challenge of that is you're not creating middleware for pro designers who are being paid to spend the time to figure out how to do all the things that are fiddly and annoying. And you're not even doing something to be used by graduate students who have a motivation to get a degree or just their intrinsic graduate student madness. And I know all about that, so it's not that I'm I've been there myself. So the trick of this is we need to make tools that feel appealing to the kinds of people who are drawn to play the game in the first place, who are not necessarily game developers, not necessarily interested as much in all of the technical things that I was just talking about. They're interested in getting creating an experience that's similar to the experience that they had that they enjoyed. Yeah, that 10 minutes is tricky. Okay, so quickly, here are a couple of things that are really important, and then I will sit down, I promise. First of all, you want to make an experience where the experience of writing and the experience of playing are as much alike as they can possibly be. And you want to make an experience where the player is able to create some content and see the result of that immediately. So for something like Versu, hypothetically, I'm officially not promising you anything at all here, just to be clear, but hypothetically that would be something like being able to drop in a few character interactions and immediately see them in the context of defaults, immediately see that play out in a story, rather than having to spend a long time preparing a complex file and seeing how that happened. The other thing that I wanted to bring out really quickly is that you need a lot of visualization tools to help people understand what it is that they've created. And that means giving lots of cross-sections of the data, doing automatic run-throughs, saying here are the experiences that were created, here are the characters that ran into each other and what they did when they were together. These are the kinds of things, the kinds of stats that are produced when you run through these games automatically, and the things that happen as a result, so people can see the results of the complex system that they've made, and you want to present as many different angles on that as you possibly can.